Today on our second Q&A podcast, community member Kevin Krause brings the guitar questions. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome, friends, to episode 164 of the Play Guitar Podcast. I'm Lee, and this is the podcast that's determined to make you a better guitar player. No matter if you're just starting out or you've been playing for years, this is the show that will help you become the guitarist you always wanted to be. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and check out the description for all of the links from the show. Welcome. We are having a blast already. We've been talking earlier today and having a great time. The topic today is all you, my friend, Kevin Krause. Thank you for joining us here.
Thank you for having me.
So Kevin is a community member. He's also a coaching member. How long have we been doing that now?
Oh, I want to say since August.
Since August, yeah.
Maybe
So since things were starting to pick back up again a little bit there. So yeah, so making a lot of progress, having a lot of fun. I always look forward to seeing his videos each week, and we get along pretty good. And I thought, hey, why not Kevin? Right? He's going to bring the good questions. He's not going to give me the easy ones, you know. And so that's good news. So Kevin, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your history with the guitar, how you started with the guitar and how things have been going since then.
Yeah, so I live in the frigid north here in Wisconsin. That's why I've got the hat on today, although it's a balmy 16 degrees today. So 2 days ago it was negative 32, so I'm feeling good about that. I think my guitar playing story, is similar to a lot of people who are in the group here and who's been in and out of the group. I started playing when I was either 13 or 14. I decided to take some guitar lessons at the local music store. Started out learning from an old guy who taught me things like just open chords and playing Mr. Bojangles, things like that, just a 12-bar blues. After about a year, he felt like he taught me everything he could. And then they just hired a younger gentleman who just graduated from Musicians Institute out in California. And he had come back home and was going to give some more current guitar lessons. So I took lessons from him probably for about a year and a half. During that time, he taught me pretty much everything he learned at Musicians Institute. I would say I had a hard time comprehending some of the theory behind it, just because of the age I was at, and maybe I guess his level as a teacher, maybe it was a little harder for me to pick up some of that, but I did have quite a bit of groundwork laid already for little bit of an understanding of theory. Right around that time, I got into my first band. We played really horrible original tunes that we wrote. And then we, of course, got into all the popular music of the time, late 80s, early 90s. So we played Motley Crue and Metallica and things like that. I feel like I progressed a little bit in that second set of guitar lessons with the younger guy, but then he ended up moving, so we just stopped. And he pretty much said he taught me everything he knew. So at that point, I figured, hey, I guess this is it. So, basically just learned cover tunes, played in a couple bands in high school. And never really took it, learning the instrument past that. I would say I mostly played power chords. We had a couple ballads thrown in there. Never really soloed much at all, or even tried, because I didn't understand scales and what sounded good over what. And then I played a little bit after high school. But then I'd say for about 20 years, most of my guitars just sat. I'd pull out my acoustic once in a while and pluck around on it and try to remember the songs I used to play in high school, mostly just for a little bit of fun here and there. But didn't even play much of that. And then during COVID, I was working from home, so I had a little more free time. And during that time is when I stumbled on the Play Guitar podcast, and I listened to a couple of them and really liked how it was set up. It was a shorter podcast, and I was actually learning things. And right around that time is when, Lee, when you started doing more of the live shows on YouTube. So I started tuning into those, started getting to know people in the community, started learning more, picking up my guitar and playing more, and then kind of flowed into coaching. And the growth I've seen in the last half a year I've been in coaching and going through the academy stuff, way farther than I was way back when, and 20 years after that. So I'm really enjoying it.
Awesome. Let's talk about the 20 years. Okay. This is common. There's the you pick the guitar up and you get to the point where you're playing in bands, but you're really not sure what you're doing. You're doing it enough that you're out there playing, and you'd like to go farther, and then something happens. I'm really curious what happened. It's probably family. It's got to be what it is. What was it for you?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of things. During that, I was probably 17, 18 when I was really playing in the bands more. After high school, you're pushed to figure out what you want to do with your life, which I don't think anybody at that age knows what they want to do with their life. But the one thing, your family will tell you is you got to do something besides play guitar. You're not going to make it as a musician. So, I went to school, I went to a tech school, and then got married young. And from that point on, I just felt like I was trying to make the best, the right choices. Right. Which, looking back, I wish I would have done things a lot differently, but that's kind of how it goes. And, you get into a job, and then you have a child, and life just kind of happens. And it feels like the guitar just keeps getting pushed further back, kind of in the closet. So
it happens. The closet guitar, right. Or the under the bed in the case. That's no good too. Mm-hmm. So well, I'm happy that 20 years is over and you're back at it again. And there's no such thing as older guitar players, right? We're just players. We've got plenty. Well, we've got as much time as we have, right? So
I like the sound of that. Yeah,
that's right. So I'd like to go into the chat for a minute, see who's here. Say hi to everybody. Coke's here. Hey, Coke, how you doing? Evan R, what's happening, man? How you doing? And then let's see here, Jim. Oh, Jim made it again. That's all. This is, I think, this third one in the row that Jim was here for. And let's see here. David was here. Dean. So we got some good folks in here today. We're going to go ahead and get started with the Q&A. Now, Dean was here last time, and it went wonderful. And we're going to take the same format. So we're going to try it. We'll do whatever that you want to do, Kevin. But we're going to try and do. Let's shoot for 3 questions today. And if you have them, let's go ahead and get started.
All right. So my first question was advice for playing without a band or other musicians around. So, right now I'm using backing tracks a lot for doing improv, but I'd like to work on my rhythm more I'd prefer to do it with maybe some bass and drums instead of just a metronome. I'd love to play with people, but right now I don't really have any musician friends in the area. It just doesn't seem like there's a lot of options where I'm at for, people my age who are relearning the instrument and wanting to get back into it. Plus, COVID's happened now for the last year and a half. So I've been kind of thinking about what I can do to get more of a feel for like playing with a band, even though I'm not playing with a band. So I thought of things like maybe the Spark amp might be helpful because I know they have that Smart Jam option and things like that. So I just wanted to throw that out, just see if you or anyone had any thoughts or ideas of things that might be a little more beneficial.
Yeah, and we're going to go into the chat as well throughout this too. We're not just going to have a certain time we see it. If anyone has anything to add to this, feel free. I'm just going to start from the beginning. Jamming with other players, right? What is it about that's so beneficial? What is it about that's so different than playing to a background track? Just we really need to think. Now, it's one-sided playing to a background track. You're reacting. The whole thing's about reacting. Okay, you listening to another player listening to you, and the choices that are made at that time become very musical. Hopefully, depending on who you're playing with, right? But it's there's a give and a take that's really important and really musical. And when you get to that point where you're frustrated and you're not sure correct, and you play to a metronome, and that's really, that can be tough, to stick with. And then you start to do the background tracks, and background tracks, weren't always, that's, I don't know, 10, 15 years, background tracks have been better. Most people didn't play to background tracks. What did people back in the day practice to? And that is the actual recordings, right? They play along with recordings. I know my father-in-law, who's not with us anymore, but he was a singer and a guitar player. And I've heard stories that he would be, I don't know, somewhere in a store or something like that, and you'd hear a song on the radio playing in the background, and he'd be learning it while he's listening to it. He had developed those skills from learning things off of recordings so well that he could do it without even his guitar being there, right? So back in the day when people have records and they'd slow it down by putting their finger on the record, right? So what I'm going to suggest is not that, but it's in that vein. Something I did when I was starting to play, and when I was really wanting to be in a band, and actually the bands, when you're first starting to play, sometimes the bands you're playing with, it's difficult to make sense of anything, right? You're not sure, am I going the right direction? Is all this just, are we doing it wrong? And I would play along to live videos of my favorite bands playing. Not the studio track, but live recordings. And I found that really, really, really helpful. You're not getting a reaction when it's like I said before, it's one-sided. No matter what you do, it's going to be one-sided when you don't have another person to play along with, or a group to play along with. But I found that when I played along with a group of people who were doing that, who were listening back and forth, and the tempo was fluctuating. It wasn't to a click, it was right on a stage playing live, and they would try different things. Someone would hear one person play a certain way, and then they might jump up a register and play it differently than you've heard on the studio recording. And I found that when I would play like this, it was when I was trying to play Allman Brothers style music. I had moved to, this was in my 20s, I had moved to Georgia, and that was really big down there, and I really loved them, and I wanted to play like that, and didn't have anyone to throw ideas back and forth with. So I would just play to their live. I actually bought a live DVD of theirs and would just play to those songs all the time. And I found out a few things. I found out, well, what parts of the songs do they play note for note, and what parts of the songs do they jam on, those kind of things. And how do the guitar players, when one's playing chords down low, the other one will be playing some in a different area of the guitar, how do those things fit together? And I started to also play with the rhythm correctly. I would get into a groove, so I would hear these. Now, the drummers in these bands are not hearing me play, but they're hearing the other people in the band playing, and there is that reaction. It's, to me, it was the closest thing I could get to being in a live band and practicing along with them. And I saw my playing go through the roof, as far as confidence and being able to get up when I finally did get up on stage, knowing what I was in for, playing along with those. So to me, that was a real, something you don't really hear about, but it was as close as you could get, I guess is where I'm going with that. But let's talk about some of the other things that we have. So you have loop pedals, right? And so you're playing along to a not perfect background track, because it's you and you're just sitting there playing it. Not you, but it's a person sitting there playing. It's not fixed and perfect. So you have that. You have the background tracks. You mentioned the Smart Jam on the Spark. And not having the Spark, I looked that up. Let's see here. So it says the Smart Jam feature is every bit as clever. Simply pick a tempo, play a few chords or riffs, select a genre, and let the amplifier create a backing track for you to play over. So you guys in the chat who have the Spark, let me know about that. And also, you have the Spark too, right, Kevin?
I don't yet. No.
Oh, you don't yet? Okay.
Nope.
Okay, well, let me know. So it looks to me like it listens to what you're playing, figures out a key, and then you tell it a style, and it creates a background track underneath of what you're playing. If that's what I'm getting from this, which is cool. It's very convenient. And I guess it could be considered a back and forth listening. It listens to you, it figures out what you're playing, creates a track, and then you listen to what it's doing, and your playing adjusts accordingly. So that looks like something that's pretty neat. I'd be curious to hear how much fun that is. And the other thing that I've noticed with people playing in bands is timing. So you notice you start off the song and the drummer goes click, 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 and then puts the sticks together, right, and starts the song, or has some way of setting the tempo, and everyone else plays along with the band, and usually there's one member of the band that's super solid that kind of keeps the time. In jazz bands, they consider the bass player the timekeeper, but in rock, it's usually the drummer who's the timekeeper. And then whenever you'd hear a break where it would be just maybe the guitar player or just the keyboard player, and you notice that time just goes out the window, right? So the people that's keeping everyone together at that point is gone, and your adrenaline's kicking in, and all of a sudden your timing's off, right? So working on your own timing before you get to these bands is an important thing to consider too. Working with the metronome, working with these background tracks, even though that you may not get the feel of playing in a band or playing with other musicians. Sometimes that's needed. This may be the only time you have to really work on your own, getting your own timing. As we're talking about rhythm, I'm talking mostly about rhythm with this, but when you play in a band, we've talked about chord choices too, and lead choices, and maybe doing fills that are influenced by maybe what the vocal melody is doing. All of those things really do take your playing in a different place, So my point being that even though now you may not be in a situation, and none of us really are in a situation where we can do a lot of jamming, go out and meet people to jam with. That's, to me, the big thing. I'm in a new area, and I'd love to be out there and meeting people and jamming and stuff like that, and it's just not going on right now. But there's two sides of it. There's certain things that you could be working on now that you aren't in a situation like that. Get your timing down. really work your timing so that when you are in a situation like that, you have something to contribute with the band. So let's see here. We've got some folks in the chat. I'm going to go through that. David says, I think nothing beats playing with other players. It's definitely, to me, the way to go. It's the most fun. Let's see here. Coke says, I use an app called Loops, and the free version alone has a ton of drum grooves to choose from. And whatever it is, I try to make a rhythm for that genre I've chosen. Okay, I like to check Loops out. And we've got some other things, too, I'm going to talk about in just a second. Coke says, but I also practice many various rhythms to just a metronome. Yes, sometimes we talked about this a couple weeks ago, sometimes with a background track, they're so dense, it's easy to not hear where the beat falls. And where it sounds good, because everything's kind of, it's like distortion on guitars. It kind of hides things. Where if you were to play the same thing with a metronome, you might be able to hear where you need to work on your rhythm a little bit too. So I would think both are very important. David says there's so many background tracks in YouTube. And Coke says, I also play the grooves in varied tempos. And he says, backing tracks feel too tight for rhythm practice. Let's see. And before everything was to a click, when were you playing in your rock bands? You said 17, so it was a little while ago.
Yeah.
No one was recording to a click back then. I mean, you would every once in a while, but it wasn't like everyone had recording software at home that kept everything to a click.
No.
So you had to work on feel. And when tempo was off, it was things you had to work on. Coke says, like the song often dictates what groove you can play, and I feel limited by that. Says, another thing I practiced timing on when I filled my baby bottles, I learned the tempo to count off, fill up exactly 1 ounce of water. So if I need 4 ounces, I count 1 yen, 2 yen, 3 yen. Awesome. So here's Jason, and Jason says, he's got the Spark. He says, pretty much it listens to the chord changes. Okay. Yeah, because it said chords or a riff. That where it says or a riff, that's what I was how it would figure out the chords to a riff that you're playing. I thought that would be pretty neat. And Dean says, I love my Spark, except that part of it kind of weak. The backing track search features great. Use that a lot. Okay. Yeah, I want to get, I really want to get my hands on a Spark and a Katana too, and kind of go back and forth between them. I may do that in a few months or two after the Academy goes live. So, okay. All right. So I'm going to stop there. Did I give you any insight at all?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one thing I started thinking about doing was just playing to the recording. I haven't been doing a ton of that, but that's probably something that I'll start doing a little more of now.
Yeah. And I strongly suggest the live recordings because the regular tracks have a lot of overdubs, and sometimes it's tough to hear what the guitar, what parts are what, back and forth.
Sure.
Let's see here. Les says, hey Les, how you doing? Has anyone tried the Beat Buddy pedal? Thinking about getting one for jamming and learning rhythm. I have one. I used it. My wife and I did a acoustic gig. Yeah, like 7 months every Friday. We did it on a deck at a restaurant. And it had a lot of fun. And we just started off, I was just playing acoustic and she was singing, and that was it. And then, of course, over time, you have to get the toys. You have to get the gear going. And I got the Beat Buddy pedal and learned about it, learned how I could put some different songs in there. And I actually paired it with it was called a Pigtronics, forget what the name of it was. It was a very fancy loop pedal that had MIDI out, so I could sync them both together. And that was a lot of fun. Both of those together, having the drum beats from the Beat Buddy and then the loop pedal that was synced to it, you could do a whole lot of different stuff. And I also had a one of the Boss octave pedals, so I can do kind of a bass line as well. So yeah, they're fun. It's pretty involved though. If you just want to turn the Beat Buddy pedal on and have a drum beat, it's super easy to do. But once you want to start kind of getting a song together and having it match what you want the song to do, it gets a little more involved there. Okay, let's see. Oh, Jim says I have the Beat Buddy Mini and really like it. That's right. Yep. I've seen him play that there. Okay, Kevin, what you got for me? What's next? Let's go on to the next one.
All right. So, Lee, you know that I've been through the minor pentatonic scales. We went through major scales, and now we're doing major pentatonic. So I'm learning the scales I need to know to do improv over backing tracks and things like that. I feel like sometime lately that I've been kind of hitting a plateau with my playing. So I've started looking at different things that other people do. So I'm wondering how much time and when should I be really looking at learning like different guitar tricks, I would call them, or maybe not tricks, that wouldn't be the best word, but like sweep picking, working on like economy picking, hybrid picking, and things like that in regards to kind of where I'm at on the roadmap.
Okay. Yeah, that's there's a flow, kind of a flow chart to that. So first thing you need to do is you need to get your fingers on the notes. That's the first part. And I highly recommend everyone, when they learn their scales, they learn the 5 patterns, the whole neck of the guitar. That's a huge stumbling point for people. They'll learn one pattern of a scale and slide that into different keys, and you get stuck. You play all the same sounding licks all the time. You get kind of down. Once you start playing these, you can play the same exact licks in different areas, and they sound different because the strings, you may be playing them on lower sounding strings, and you start to see, oh, okay, once I can get around the guitar and not think of it as just a scale that's in one place, but wherever my hand is at the time, that takes a big pressure off. And so that's why in every one of the levels, when we have a certain scale, I don't ever just give you all the 5 patterns in 1 week. That's a big problem with people. They try to assimilate all this information. It's dots on a sheet of graph paper is really what it is. And it's too much to handle. So we break it down each week. We do what you can grab with your hand at a certain fret. Then we move to the next pattern, and the next pattern, and the next pattern. And we spend quality time with those and try to relate those to licks that we come up with, and maybe even songs that we can hear in there. I know Dale, in his video this week, was playing pattern 2 of the minor pentatonic. I think it was like F sharp minor pentatonic, and heard an Allman Brothers song in that. And that is gold when you're trying to take in all this information, and then all of a sudden you realize, hey, this is from that song that I like to listen to all the time. That's a connection in your mind that never goes away. And once you have that, your brain knows anytime I want that type of a sound, I know how to get it now. I know where to get it. So that's the first part, getting the notes under your fingers. Okay, after that, and with the improv, we're learning phrasing. That's how do we take these dots on a grid and make music with them? That's the next step. Once you make music, the nervousness goes away. Okay, I can do something with these notes, and I can make them sound nice. That, and then build on that. That's where we start refining. At that point is where we start doing picking, worrying about, sweep picking, raking strings, vibrato, all of those kind of things. So if you're not sure, flip it, right? So let's say okay, I really love tapping, right? Eddie Van Halen type tapping, or I really love raking strings or sweep picking. Can you imagine doing sweep picking when you really didn't know what the scales were? It would be tough, right? It would you just be trial and error trying to find the right notes that make the sweep picking sound good. So that's starting on the wrong end of the building. That's starting at the top of the building instead of at the foundation. So we've got knowing your scales inside out, knowing your phrasing, then the tricks, the vibrato, whammy bar, raking, all of those kind of things. And then I always think of economy picking or sweep picking, any kind of hybrid picking, those things as icing on the cake. Taking what I've learned and now polishing it so well that I can present. It's more of presenting what I can already do better. So if you're feeling that your phrasing isn't quite there yet, then I wouldn't worry about that. I would just stick with down up picking until it's solid, and until you feel like, okay, I can spend a half hour going up and down through these scales, and in each pattern that I go to, I'm comfortable. I'm thrown by it. At that point where you feel that, where you feel I'm not thrown, that's when I would start refining things. And researching too. Looking at your favorite players and look at what techniques do they use. If it's Mark Knopfler, using finger style, or Yngwie with sweep picking, whatever your favorite player's doing, take a look. Take a look at this hand. No one really looks at the picking hand too much. I heard I think it was Steve Vai or someone that says that they would warm up doing this for as long as they could take it. Right? Because there's really nothing fancy that your picking hand is doing. It's really just going back and forth on an open string. So just sitting there for, I don't know, half hour doing this would drive you insane. But the longer that you can do it, the more reps you have in it, the more solid that your picking is. It's one half of what you're playing. So that's the way I would do it. I would say, get your notes and patterns together, get your phrasing together, then get your vibrato and tricks together, and then after that, go for really refining your picking, switching from down on picking to something else. Does that resonate to you? Does that put things in order?
It does. Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. And a lot of times lately where I've been kind of questioning, trying to look into these things a little more and learning them a little better is when I'm listening to or trying to figure out a guitar part, and it's like, not hearing them play a certain way and just not knowing. It's like, okay, how are they doing that? And sometimes it is like raking when they're hitting a note and things like that. So that's where I'm starting to get curious about those things, because it's like, hey, that's how I want to sound. But when I try to play that, it doesn't sound exactly like that. So
yeah, it's chunking things. It's extreme focus on what you're doing. So if you're not sure, say you take a lick, like you're saying, from your favorite guitar player, and make sure that you can play it, and make sure you understand it. Where does the lick come from? What chords are being played at the time? What scale patterns are those notes coming from? Once you have that, and you don't have to think about it anymore, then focus in on the technique, how that's coming across. Because if you're having to think about the notes, and you're not really, and it's all memorization. A lot of the lick playing now is going to a website and getting the tab, and it's 3 4 5 3 4 5 2 3 4 5, and that's what you're thinking. It's like a player piano, with the little punches out there. So hit this now, hit this now, hit this now. But you're not thinking about why it works. You're not thinking about the reasons and how you can use that with your own playing later. Okay, so I think that's what I've got to say about that. I don't think I'll go into it. Let's see if anybody else has anything to say. Let's go and check the chat here. Chris is here. Hey, Chris, great to see you. Let's see here. David Sparrow's here. Hey, man. And let's see here. Okay, so they're just talking about other things right now. So how about we get one more question? I think we got some time for one more. What do you got for me, Kevin?
All right. So practice time is something I always struggle with being a dad, working full time, all that stuff. And I know, I think we've talked about 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes. That's a good number. But sometimes I feel like that doesn't feel like enough time for me. And maybe that's just me personally. But it's always the struggle of feeling like it's not enough time, but not always having more than that. So, between scales and improv and trying to learn songs and trying to learn theory, it always feels like there's an overwhelming amount of stuff I need to learn. And maybe that's just kind of where I'm at in my journey right now. But I know sometimes if I want to run through like all the pentatonic scales and the major scales, multiple times, I could look up from that and the 30 minutes is already over. So I'm just trying to keep practice realistic. But I also want to continue to practice on my old lessons just so I don't forget things like that. So I don't know. It's something I always struggle with, and I don't know if I'm looking for an answer or if there even is an answer for that. But I guess maybe any kind of direction in that area.
Well, what it is a problem that's happening to most people more and more and more. That we have limited time and we have tons of information. So you have a limited time. You've got 30 minutes, and you want to do something that it's going to take more than 30 minutes in one day or 2 days. That stress right there, it's a disconnect. Your brain's going, this isn't going to work. So what's the first thing that you do? You try to practice as much as you can, right? You try to fit all of that in there, which on top of being a little stressed about the fact that the timing, do you ever do that? You're going through your day and you know what you have to do in your mind and you know how much time you have to do it, and they're not equal,
all the time. Yeah.
Right. So this is a problem that we're all dealing with now. I deal with it every single day. I have an enormous amount of things to do. In fact, I just edited over 200 videos for the Academy and just for the roadmap. So the roadmap between 101 and 207, there's two videos in the vast majority for each week of all of the 9 levels. So around Christmas time, New Year's time, I had that feeling. I was like, this is never going to end. I only have this much time. I had some times on the weekends and I had some times in between things during the week. And it was very frustrating. And I just said, you know what? It's going to get done. It will get done if I keep with the repetition. Repetition is the key to doing this. Relaxing in that repetition. Really, it's not going to work out if I get stressed out and I try to cram all of this stuff in the 30 minutes that I have. That's not going to work out. And it's not only not going to work out, it's going to be bad for your mood, and for your situation, So you want to get that frustration out. Have you ever joined something where everything was laid out for you, where you didn't have to think, where do this week and do this next week, and you trusted that you would achieve a goal over time? Trust in repetition. It works. It works better than cramming, right?
Yeah.
And you can do it calmly and have fun, because I'm really thinking about sort of an infographic or something like that, and putting it out every day on social media saying, guitar's supposed to be fun, right? You know how many people they want to have fun with it, and it's so frustrating. It's fun. It's supposed to be fun. So what I want you to do is I want you to get one of these, okay? Yellow pad, 99 cents or whatever it is. And write the date at the top, okay? And write practice and split it into 2 sections. So if you've got 30 minutes, 15 minutes, and 15 minutes. And the first 15 minutes, I would like for you to work on the thing that you feel is holding you back the most. Okay? It could be your rhythm. It could be, I don't know my scales well enough. It could be changing chords. But be honest with yourself. What could I do? It's the 80-20 principle. Was it Pareto's principle? What can I do a little bit of that will give me the most benefits? Okay, so if I spent some time working on my chords back and forth, I wouldn't have to worry about those again. And then that's going to set me off, and I can move faster through this. I will actually achieve more. So you'll find that for the first 15 minutes, you're going to focus on the thing that's holding you back the most, and forget everything else. Work that till it's done. Now, the second 15 minutes is you're going to jam. You're going to have fun, because that's what it's about, having fun. And I'm telling you, in 3 weeks, for me, it's always 3 weeks. When you work on something intently with focus like that, your jams are going to start to show the work that you've made. It usually takes about 3 weeks, and then you can do it effortlessly. So you're not going to be able to get it all done in 30 minutes. There's too much theory and all of those kind of things. But if you take an honest assessment of where you are as a player, focus on that, right? Work that till it's done. But also at the same time, keep playing the guitar. Don't get so frustrated working something that's difficult, you know. So having a period of focus, and then having a period of music, and trusting that if I keep this up and I repeat this every day, doesn't have to be long, but just every day, that's a more efficient way of learning. And it's a way of learning that it's almost effortless, other than the work that you're doing on those 30 minutes. There's no thinking about it. There's no worrying about it. Okay, because tomorrow, guess what? You're going to be right back doing it again. Say you stink the one day, right? You play it and you record yourself, and you listen back, you're going, am I getting any better with this? Well, it's not that big a deal. You're just having a bad day. Because the next day, you're going to be right back at it again. And the next day. It takes away that pressure to make something perfect, because you only have this time to practice it. You know, especially for people who practice just on the weekends. You know, that's a pressure, because you're working. You may be doing something that that's not as fun as guitar for you. And you're working and you're working and you're working. And you're like, I can't wait to the weekend where I can spend a couple hours doing this stuff. Then you get there and the pressure builds, because I got to make the most of this time, because I know before you know it, I'm right back to doing that other thing again. You know, that 30 minutes, if you can find 30 minutes, that's gold, man. That is the thing. And it's calm, and it just takes a little bit of the planning it takes is minimal, but it takes a decision. I need to work on the thing that's holding me back the most, and focus on that. And you're on that. I talked about this in, like, gosh, one of the first episodes. I hadn't thought about it in a long time. I was at an airport, and they have those moving walkways, and it just kind of hit me. You see all the people kind of just rustling around, getting nowhere, and then you see one person there just booking across out of the airport, right? It puts you on one of those moving walkways. It's the fast track, you know, and it's calm. It's not a intense thing. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think one of the pressures for me is just that 20-year gap of looking at lost time and feeling like I want to or need to, really pack in and learn a lot that I could have learned over the last 20 years, but just didn't know, So I try to cut myself a little slack here and there on that, knowing that I feel that pressure kind of in the background.
And that's common. That's not just you. That's common. I had the idea of starting a podcast and doing videos in 2008. In fact, I had a friend of mine who did it who said, you need to be doing this. I said, that was great. But I had a family going on. It was a big time in my family that there's no way I could have spent the time doing that. So by the time that this finally rolled around, when I was able to do this now, I had that same feeling like I need to do this. I need to do everything. And I tried to do everything at first. I had the blog going, everything at the same time. And then, if you listen to the first episodes, I was doing guitar news. I was doing creating the band. I was doing all of those different things. And it didn't take long to burn out, for me to burn out from that. And I said, well, it was probably around like episode, I don't know, 30 or 40 maybe, where I said, well, what could I do what will be the most helpful for people? And that's what I'm going to focus on. And that's what I did. So yeah, just let yourself off the hook a little bit. You got time. You got plenty of time. I'm older than you, and I'm not done. I got. There's stuff that I want to do. I'm not over it. We're not done. We're not done. Bucky Pizzarelli, who died last year of COVID in his 90s, was playing right up to that. Was out gigging all of the time. So there's no rush. There's plenty of time. Okay, let's go to the chat here. Let's see. I've been seeing the chat flashing by, and I'm missing a whole bunch of it. Let's see. Chris said, practice when I can. I'm just playing, but I sit down with the course when I have a longer time period. I try to get the ball on that rolling early in the week, then again later in the week. Okay, so yeah, and a schedule is whatever you can get, as long as you're on a nice repeating schedule for whatever your situation is, that's the way to go. Don't forget to smash the like button on the video. I didn't read that before I saw that, but yes, please help us out with some likes. It's actually everyone's been helping out a lot lately, and things are going good here. Les says, yep, same here. Getting real progress from practice time is my goal. Trying to dedicate 45 to 60 minutes each time I sit down, and trying to sit down to practice 4 to 6 days a week. That's great. That's great. Perfectly in the right direction. And Jim says, sometimes I'll just take 5 minutes and practice a small part of the lesson, like the scales. Feels like I've accomplished something in that time. That's another thing too. Thanks, Jim, for that. Small goals, milestones. Those things are very effective. I always talk about how with guitar, it's very tough to gauge your own progress. You're practicing, you're putting work in, and you don't feel like you're getting anywhere. And usually when someone gives you a compliment, it knocks you the way you feel up to the next. Oh, this must be paying off. Well, in the situation that we're in, we're all stuck at home, right? Compliments are few and far between at this point, So you may be on that stair and you don't get that thing that makes you feel like you've moved up. But the truth is, with repetition, it's a very slow climb, but it's climbing, and that's more solid to me. Chris said, yeah, all those 5 minutes add up, but your brain works in the background too. And David says, I don't think I've ever timed myself when practicing. I think I just usually go with the flow. My friend asked me recently how long it would take to get good if you played 3 times a week for an hour. Yeah, that's one of my nightmare questions. How long is it going to take me to get good? Oh, you're already good, man. Don't worry about it. You got it. No sweat, right? And what's good? Good is in the eye of the beholder, right? You know, some people would say Kurt Cobain wasn't very good. And then other people would say he's the best guitar player ever. You know, it just depends. Like it's hard to gauge that, but I know what they mean by that, to be competent, you know, to feel like you could be out in a musical situation and hold your own. I would guess that would be the real way to ask that question. And I would think it would be when you master rhythm, when you understand basic rhythms, when you understand chords, when you understand scales, and how all three of those work together. Once you get that part, then you can go to pretty much any situation and play and have something to offer those. And it seems very simple when I just talk about those three things. There's a lot that goes into each of those three things. But once those three topics come together, I think you're in good shape. Let's see here. Dave says, I think if you're hooked, you just pick it up automatically without thinking, and that's when you'll start to improve. Let's see here. A few more. Chris says, I've seen some of Kevin's videos. He's doing fantastic.
Oh,
boom, up to the next.
Thanks, Chris.
And
I'm gonna grab my guitar now. No.
You're up to the next level. That's all it took right there.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that.
All right. It says, play some good melodies, all cleanly played, a lot cleaner than me. Go, Kevin. Plays with good control. All right. Oh, Chris, you did it. You did it, man. Yeah, thank you. Okay. So I think that's it. We're coming up on the hour now. If anyone in the chat has any questions, go ahead and put them in now. We'll be calling it in a few minutes. I did want to say, if you are interested in keeping your pentatonic scales, but taking them to the next level and making sure that you can play your blues solos better than you ever had before, head on over to freeblueslesson.com. That's my 6 steps to getting your blues solos under control. And also, you get access to all of the tabs that we do in the first week of each month this whole year. So you have tabs for each one of those episodes available to you there. Okay. And let's go to the chat here. I've never seen Kevin play. Honestly, no one posts enough stuff except for Eli, right? Yeah, and that's the thing in coaching. I see everybody playing, and but Eli, he does a lot in the Facebook group there. So go, Kevin Beck. Cool. And Chris. Steve's here. Hey, Steve. Man, I need to catch up with you pretty soon. Thanks, Steve. We had a great time today. Thank you, Kevin, so much for hanging out with us and bringing the good questions. I hope I answered everything that you needed and maybe brought up some things that maybe weren't so obvious. And I'm going to call it for today's podcast. That's a wrap. Thanks for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast. If you like, make sure to hit the button below to subscribe to the show. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the notification bell so you can get all of my content as soon as it comes out. For more episodes, lessons, and ways to get involved with the Play Guitar community, visit playguitarpodcast.com. Thanks again, and I will see you on the next episode. And thanks everybody in the chat for hanging out. We will see you soon, hopefully this week. I'm getting on top of things. We may do another one later on in the week. And thanks again, Kevin.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
All right. See you guys. Bye-bye.